Hey everyone, super interesting video today. We have a new earthquake swarm that started just today with 2 larger earthquakes already and with over 25 earthquakes. But there's a new study out that is revealing the structure of the magma underneath the Campi Phlegraean supervolcano. They have checked the ground of up to 20 kilometers deep, and they're giving us a 3D image of the magma and what's going on at Campi Phlegraean. This is mind-blowing, guys. Beneath this beautiful Italian coastline is one of the most dangerous supervolcanoes in the world. A colossal supervolcano. Campi Phlegraean is restless beneath the surface and is scaring over 500,000 people that live directly on top of it. Campi Phlegraean, with more than 6 million people in the greater area around Naples that would be at risk if this thing explodes. And for now, for the first time, scientists have captured a 3D image of what's really going on beneath their feet. I will show you the study, I will show you all the graphics and images, but let's have a look at the current earthquake swarm first. Look at this. The last earthquake is at Vesuvius at 2.6 for a volcano. This is large and they're very shallow, depth 0 kilometers. But then we had a 2.4 at Campi Phlegraean, also shallow depth. That's why they are felt so strongly. But let's have a look at the location of this Vesuvio earthquake. This is also interesting, and it's right underneath Vesuvius. And I've made quite a few videos about the connection, the potential connection between Vesuvius and Campi Phlegraean that is in this area. So this could be tensions that are being transported, but could it also be Vesuvius rumbling by itself? Well, it's right underneath the Vesuvius crater. But let's have a look. Let's go back to Campi Phlegraean because this is what we want to talk about right now. Let's not scare ourselves and thinking about that Vesuvius might do something as well. So magnitude 2.4 at a depth of 3 kilometers. And where is it? It's right there. There's the Solfatara. There's this area that is the most active. Pozzuoli. These people here, they're all living right on top of the volcano. So this epicenter is no surprise. This is where most of the earthquakes are happening. And this is where scientists are saying if there is an eruption that would occur, it would probably happen in this area. And speaking of eruption, I want to talk about quickly, before we talk about the study, about what a leading member, a leading scientist of the INGV, this is what we're looking at here, the Italian institute that is monitoring Campi Phlegraean and Vesuvius, what he has said about the risk and the danger of a potential eruption. Professor Giuseppe Mastro Lorenzo of the Vesuvius Observatory has said, quote, "I have always said and written in formal documents that I have sent out that there is no way to predict the escalation of this bradyseismic phenomena." That's what they're dealing with right now. The land is rising, the earthquakes are happening, the gas emissions are accelerating, the heat is coming up. So he said just a few weeks ago, we learned that the H2S, the hydrogen sulfide, has increased 5 times in recent years. And it's therefore, knowing it beforehand perhaps would have been useful for us. It could be a short-term precursor parameter, but we did not know this. He's criticizing that there was not enough attention on that they hadn't measured that. But then he said, then we learned just a few days ago that these sequences of explosion type earthquakes have been occurring for years, which can also be precursors of phreatic explosions, or even worse. In my opinion, that's what he's saying. They can be precursors in the very short term, even of eruptions. So they can be precursors of eruptions. What we're seeing at Campi Phlegraei right now. He says, if magma upwelling were to occur, if magma could have risen up to the hydrothermal system, an eruption could theoretically be imminent. Let's hope not, he says. Let's hope it happens in millennia, but it could be imminent. And that's so interesting that he's saying this. He says, even with the theoretical connection between this magma rising and the hydrothermal system, it would trigger a very rapid escalation. So we need to be aware of this, he says. Instead, there are too many reassurances from officials that give the idea that the monitoring system guarantees safety. And he said that before. If the officials are saying we're monitoring this volcano, yeah, it's one of the most monitored volcanoes in the world, that doesn't guarantee safety. And then he's criticizing the politicians and the officials because he says they said that these phenomena are unpredictable and that we could move to a higher alert level at any time. But then he says this major risk commission that they have founded and that has already met 18 times, in turn, underlined also the unpredictability of this phenomena, also declaring that an eruption could also happen very quickly without a warning. And he says, we hope it doesn't happen. But these are the facts. But officials are saying the eruption is far away because we do not see the magma rising. But he says the magma will not be seen rising. You cannot see that. He says due to the type of eruption that Campi Phlegraei is producing, we might not see it rising at all because it could do so in a very insidious way in the first few kilometers and then very, very quickly in the last more superficial kilometers. So the last few feet, meters before it reaches the surface. This is scary, guys. He says this is the characteristic of calderas. But it seems really on the official side, it's like, no, radioseism's normal, blah, 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 blah. Giuseppe Di Natale just has said, another researcher and seasoned scientist in leading position at the INGV has said, this is not normal. This is only happening before and after eruptions. Can last years, or thousands of years. But between eruptions, Campi Phlegraei has been dormant, calm for hundreds or thousands of years. So Mastro Lorenzo says, since this is characteristic for calderas, this should have been declared. People should have been informed about this in time so that the population would have had the opportunity to get to safety. He says now the situation is truly an emergency because we do not know what to do. This is interesting what he says, right? And I know this major risk commission, they're keeping themselves busy in adding more emergency levels instead of getting to a higher alert level. We're at yellow right now, and there used to be green, yellow, orange, and red. And in many scientists' opinion, they should have gone to orange. But now they have invented more levels so that they don't have to go to orange. Now they have divided yellow in 2 levels and orange in 2 levels. So we have yellow and we have dark yellow. So now we're going to dark yellow before we have to go to orange. But are they fooling themselves? Let's get to that new study because this is groundbreaking, very, very interesting. For the first time, I said is these scientists in their study have captured a 3D image of what's really going on underneath Campi Phlegraei. What did they find? They found a vast magma system, huge, stretching as deep as 20 kilometers into the earth, with different bulbs of magma that are accumulating at different heights. So this is a pressurized, it's under pressure, an interconnected web of molten rock, magma, interconnected in different heights and areas. Also a web of gases plus ancient faults that have been hidden from the view until now. So this supervolcano is a very, very complex system. What is the scariest part, guys? This system that they have now been able to map looks strikingly similar to that system, to how it looked underneath Campi Phlegraei when Campi Phlegraei triggered the last devastating eruption there in 1538 that was creating Monte Nuovo, the Monte Nuovo crater. And that wasn't even a supervolcanic eruption. Even if Campi Phlegraei produces medium or small eruptions, it's bad enough. So it's unstable. Many scientists have said that for years. It's creeping towards the eruption. The name Campi Phlegraei, translated the burning fields, has that name for a good reason. It's an ancient caldera. It's just west of Naples, beautiful landscape in Italy, but it has produced some of the largest, most devastating eruptions in European history that has affected the whole world. Yeah, it last erupted in 1538, but that was small. Its true power, the true power of Campi Phlegraei, guys, we have to imagine that goes back 39,000 years when it unleashed one of the biggest volcanic events on Earth. It's called the Companion Ignimbrite. This was an eruption that was so massive that it has changed the global, the word with the C and ends with an E. If I say that word, my video gets a banner from YouTube underneath my video player educating everyone about that change. And I don't want that. But I guess you know what I mean, which word that I mean. It has impacted the global. How do I say it? I need to find a word, another word. The world has become so ridiculous, guys. I have to say it, but what can I say? You know what I mean. It was getting very cold. The sun was covered. Nothing was growing. And I have made a video about this. If that happened today, the world would only have food for 74 days. That sounds scary. Today, that threat is not history. It is still the present. That's what we need to understand. We all always have the tendency to say, yeah, that's not going to happen. That's fear-mongering, blah, 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 until something happens, right? The volcano is waking up, or it has woken up. That's a fact. Ground is rising. Gases are venting. Earthquakes are increasing in number and in magnitudes. Something is shifting deep below. We cannot deny this any longer. But until now, it's been a guessing game. Seismic data have given us rough outlines. Geochemistry has given the scientists some clues. The land rise has given them some clues. But now we have the breakthrough. It is a breakthrough, guys. Magnetotelluric imaging. Magnetotelluric imaging. A geophysical method that can see through rock. And that's the technique we need to look really down there. It doesn't drill. That's the good part. It's been very controversial, especially Giuseppe Di Natale did some drilling, and they wanted to do some drilling again to find out what's happening. But then people were scared. They wanted to stop the project. They thought that they would make the volcano explode. But Giuseppe Di Natale said, no, it's safe, right? It's here. You're drilling holes in Iceland for geothermal power plants into the volcano. So maybe they will do that in the near future, but here they do not have to drill. What do? They're listening to the volcano. They're using natural signals from the Earth's magnetic field. And that is so interesting because I've just recently released a video about a study from the INGV that they're using changes in electromagnetic fields of the Earth before a bigger earthquake. They're trying to detect that and able to work on an earthquake prediction system. That's very, very interesting technology. So it's listening to Campi Phlegraean, to the Earth's magnetic field that is sending signals. So scientists can now detect how easily electricity flows through underground material. And depending on what physical form that material has, this electricity flows in a different way. Why is that so important? Well, because this molten rock that's down there that we call magma conducts electricity way more differently than cold solid rock. You get what I'm hinting at? That's how we can find it. So you just need to know how to read the signals. Then you can spot the magma. Boom! That is amazing. And you can do this even very deep underground. They did this up to 20 kilometers. And that's exactly what they did at Campi Phlegraean. So I'm showing you this graphic here. This is where they started. On this map, you see the circular Campi Phlegraean caldera that is about 15 kilometers wide. And then you see the colored dots. They show where the scientists have placed their instruments. Because this caldera is so large, you can't just do this at one spot. You need to develop a grid to really capture the monstrosity of Campi Phlegraean that is underneath the Earth. So they have these colored dots. They have measuring stations, 42 on land and 6 in the sea, because Campi Phlegraean stretches into the water. They're all carefully spaced across the caldera so that they can capture the whole thing. And then they started collecting these electromagnetic data that I just described from all these points. And that allowed them to create a full 3D resistivity model of the crust. Where was it more resisting? Where was it not? Reaching down 20 kilometers beneath the surface. That is absolutely amazing. And what they found was absolutely stunning. So let's look inside Campi Phlegraean, or underneath Campi Phlegraean. We are looking at slices through the model, a sliced view of the Campi Phlegraean magnetic volcanic monstrosity that is underneath the surface. So it's a cross section from the 3D model. That's what it's called. And you see the blue and the dark colors that represent low resistivity. It's resisting low. This is where molten rock, magma, or fluids may exist. So these areas are the spots where there's no hard, cold, solid rock. And when we look at the depth of 8 to 20 kilometers, there's a huge area, a huge zone of low resistivity. So there's a lot going on there. Scientists call this the CO anomaly. And what is this, the CO anomaly? This is most likely a massive zone of crystal mush. This is rocks mixed with about 10% of magma. So if that mixes, it can get explosive. So far, it's not enough to erupt yet. That's what the scientists thinking, but it's enough to be dangerous. And what do we have above that? There's a narrow vertical channel that appears. Vertical channel, also low resistivity. So something's going up, something's coming up vertical. They call this the FC anomaly. It looks like a pipe that's connecting this deep magma zone to the mid-crust area. That sounds scary, guys. We've always thought that this would be the case, but now we know. And then above that, there's another layer. They call this the RO zone. That might contain old magma bodies that might have partially solidified right now. Could also be altered by hot fluids. We know that magma was intruding in the 1980s, was trying to reach the surface, but was then stopped by the caprock layer. And we also know that caprock layer has lost 2/3 of its strength since the 1980s. So it's way weaker now. Should something happen again, should magma press towards the lid again. And then they found something even shallower, guys. It gets scarier by the second when I'm reporting about this. They found, how they call it, C1 and C2. C1 and C2 are very low resistivity zones, very low resistivity, just a few kilometers below the surface. Dang, right? And these may represent only hydrothermal systems, maybe, or even stalled magma from past eruptions or past intrusions. And now take a look at this. This is a 3D view of the magma architecture, of that magma that's down there. Basically, a full 3D view of the magma plumbing system. You have to call this a plumbing system because there's pipes that connect different magma chambers, magma bodies. And you can see in this image how everything connects. So we see the deep mush zone at the bottom that they call CO. Then we have the vertical pathways, FC, that are bringing stuff upwards. That's scary. And then we have the partially crystallized mid-crust, RO. And then finally, the complex, very shallow system where brines, gases, and altered rocks sit close to the surface. This kind of structure is what scientists now call a transcrustal magmatic system throughout the crust, transcrustal, because it spans nearly the entire crust of Campi Phlegraean. And that is a problem because it's so widespread, so big, that makes it harder to predict what could happen. If we only have one magma chamber and a small area, it's way easier, like in Iceland, for example. And then they have shown us another interesting graphic here, figure 4, the seismicity and a resistivity overlap. So are the seismic events connected, or the epicenters, the location of these earthquake swarms, are they connected with where the magma is? So this part is critical to do this overlap because we now see the earthquake data on top of this resistivity model. And if you look at this, you'll notice many recent quakes are happening along the edges of these FC and RO anomalies. Look at this. That's not random. So this suggests that fluids or magma may be pressurizing these zones and possibly even trying to rise. That is scary, guys. It absolutely is. Because it confirms all the warnings that the INGV scientists have given, basically aside from the institution. The institution was still basically doing the job for the officials. Do not create a panic, do not hurt real estate values, make the tourists still come. But again, this is not good. And then let's have a look at another graph, figure 10. This is the resistivity versus the melt fraction. Let's break this down. For this model, they're using lab data, but also field observations. So what are they doing? The scientists are estimating how much melt might be inside of each zone, how much magma is in each layer. So in the deep CO anomaly, there's about 10% melt. In the FC pipe, there's around 8%. And in the RO zone, 3%, possibly crystallized magma that is still capable of causing unrest. And even small percentages like this can trigger trouble, especially if gases accumulate there. And we do have a rise in gases. That's why it's interesting to look at figure 11. That's the melt resistivity versus composition. So this chart shows how the resistivity of magma changes based on its water and sodium content. If it has more water and sodium, it's a more conductive melt magma. And the Phlegraean magma is rich in both. So what we're seeing in this model aligns well with what petrology tells us about its composition. And then the big picture, the schematic of the magma system. That gives us the big picture. This schematic shows us the full structure of the volcano's underground system. This is a deep, mushy magma reservoir. Vertical channels that feed smaller pockets, shallow zones that could release gases, could cause ground uplift, and potentially lead to an eruption. Bang. Phlegraean is not a dormant supervolcano. It's a living, shifting, pressurized system, and that's why they need to watch it so closely. So what does this mean for the surveillance of Phlegraean now? It means that the monitoring tools that they have, GPS systems, seismic sensors, gas detectors, they now have a 3D map to guide them. So now they know where most likely where the magma is stored, they know where it might rise, and they know that unrest in one part of the system could affect another because they are connected. And I would like them to do this between Vesuvius and Phlegraean, just to be sure that these are not somewhat connected. Because it's always earthquakes form at Phlegraean. Look at the current list again. Vesuvius, Phlegraean, one Vesuvius, Phlegraean. And Vesuvius is showing bigger ones in the last year and a half. So that volcano is not just one single magma chamber. It's a vertical network, and that changes how people need to prepare. So this study can't predict the next eruption. It can't. But it gives a powerful tool to recognize warning signs before it's too late. There's a quote from Roberto Isaiah. He's a researcher at the INGV and the first author of this study. And he has said, quote, Phlegraean may represent a natural risk due to its potential to generate eruptions. For this reason, an accurate and constant understanding of its internal dynamics is essential. To this end, our study was conducted with the aim of reconstructing the internal architecture of the volcanic's magmatic system up to 20 kilometers deep, identifying the position and the characteristics of the magma accumulation zones to better understand the mechanisms of transfer of the magma through the Earth's crust, transfer from deeper down to up to a potential eruption. There were some challenges. So he says investigating Campi Phlegraean was not only a scientific challenge, but also logistical and technologically. The area is so densely populated and it's subject to strong electromagnetic interference. And that makes, of course, the data acquisition more complex. So he says we developed an innovative acquisition protocol to ensure high quality data despite this urban context. He says the current unrest phase at Campi Phlegraean and the related concerns that come with it make this research extremely, extremely important. We need to understand the internal architecture of the volcano. It's essential to evaluate the processes that are happening right now and provide useful information to the scientific community and the risk management. So I hope they can draw some valuable conclusions from this, guys. I'll keep you updated about this. This is very, very interesting. And in the meantime, check out my videos in the end screen. I have done quite a few interesting videos also about what's going on in Iceland, but also there's a new prediction. Which city in the US has the highest risk for a devastating earthquake in 2025? This year, not overall, for this year. Many of you have asked in this video, why is Seattle not on the list? Because it's for this year, right? Not an overall risk. Check out this video. It's really, really interesting. I'm also giving you background information about different fault system. And there's also the New Madrid fault that I am giving you information about. And you have asked about this. So check out this video on the end screen. It's really an interesting video. And I hope to see you soon. If you want to support the channel, guys, there's links in the description underneath this video. I have a buymeacoffee.com/silky site. You're helping me a lot there to take care of my animals. It's greatly appreciated. This channel basically helps my animals. And if you want to become a monthly supporting member of this channel, you're getting some behind the scenes videos, what's going on in my private life. All the links are in the description of this video, or you click the join button here for the membership. Thanks for the supers you're sending me here, and for watching, for commenting, for sharing my videos. You are making this channel possible, and I love you guys. I hope you're safe. I see you very, very soon. Bye.